Hello everyone and welcome back to the Little Quilter. Today we're doing something a little bit different. It's, if you've been watching the show, something that I've talked about doing before, and this is basically I'm doing a test run. So I have a new pantograph that I'm going to be doing, and I want to do it on the Northwest quilt. That is the goal for this, but we're going to test out my theory that I have been working with so far. So we're going to put a little bit of science into quilting, and the theory that I have had is that when I do my pantograph quilting, I actually draw it from behind using the laser light on my machine, and I draw it out on the quilt and then come around to the front and I quilt it up here. Now, my thought has always been that this allows me to do a much smoother quilting. Whenever I can see where I'm going, I'm able to follow it just easier for myself, right? Other people are going, why are you doing this? Why? Why are you doing this? You have the space, just quilt it from behind like a normal person does for a pantograph. And I don't, I did it that way for one or two of the quilts that I have done with pantographs, and I was just unsatisfied with how it looked, and I wanted to try it from the front. And that's how I figured out a way to do that, and I will show you guys that way as well. But today, we're going to test if my theory is correct. Does it actually look different? So I've already started this, and I didn't film that. I've already set the quilt up, so I've got my backing and batting, and it is just this extra fabric that I had sitting here, and it was just the perfect size to do just a little test quilting on it. So I'm going to do several passes with doing it from the back, and then I'm going to go and do it from the front as well. And I've already started from the back, so every time I do a pantograph, no matter how I'm quilting it, I will do that first design that's sort of the maybe I'll show a picture of it on here. So it's basically the lighter design that's not the main one that you're going to be quilting from here on out. And so that design that I'm doing it to sort of give that boundary area, and then the next step is going in and actually doing the actual pantograph that you're supposed to be quilting. But I think it just works really well for the edges as a starting point, and then you can kind of build off of it from there. All right, I want to just show you guys this part so far. So this, again, like I said, is just regular old fabric that I had, nothing fancy or special about it. And yes, I am doing a dark thread here. So I did this on purpose so that we would be able to see it and contrast it. Obviously, if we were doing an actual quilt, I would be using something more along the line of a cream colored or a white color so that it would kind of blend a little bit more. So yes, there is a caveat in that using this dark contrasting fabric is going to make my mess ups much more visible, right? This might not be as visible if it was in a cream fabric. It would just kind of blend in and give that texture. We're still getting that texture. You can see that here already, and it's a really, really gorgeous design. It kind of reminds me of like mermaids for some reason, under the sea type thing, which I did feel like the Northwest quilt was a little bit like that. Now, obviously, from a scientific standpoint here, if we're trying to do this, I'm going to be doing all of the quilting. We're going to try and I've never done this quilting design before. It's a brand new quilting design for me, so there's no pre-learned ideas or flow through it. I feel like if you do certain quilt designs over and over, you just get kind of a motion, a memory motion where your hands just are doing it. I don't have that with this. This is a brand new design. I am doing it with a dark color thread so that we can actually see the design and hopefully to see the differences. Yes, this is going to make the design errors that I do show a little bit more than if I were doing this design for a real quilt. I'm generally using thread that is going to blend a little bit more with the fabric. I'm not generally using something that's so bright and going to pop out. Now, occasionally I have on some quilts had darker and lighter fabrics, and it does usually show up a little bit more on that darker fabric when you use a light thread, but we're going to go opposite here, and we're using a light background with that dark thread. Alright everybody, as you can see, where I was going to show you guys what I have done, I basically had to stop and back up because I've made a critical error in my quilting of a pantograph, and that is to make sure that you evaluate the size of your throat space compared to your pantograph. So I completely forgot about that whenever I was picking out my pantograph, and I just was looking for the pantograph that called to me, and I happened to choose one that was quite large. I think it's like I'll look and I'll put it down here, but I think it's like 12 inches or something like that. So it's a big pantograph. The KingQuilter here has an 18-inch throat space, and so the recommendation is that you do a pantograph that's like 10 inches or less, and that likely gets smaller the bigger your quilt is, right? Because the bigger your quilt, the more fabric you have on your take-up bar, and that fabric space then shortens your throat space, right? And unfortunately, while your throat space shrinks, your pantograph size does not. So I chose one that was much too big, did my initial here, and then I was going through, let me see if I can show you. So I've already rolled it up to get to a new area to quilt on, and hopefully I have enough space to do to do my comparison. I think I will, especially with the smaller, but you can see I have this, and I got to about here and I ran out of space. I could not go back because my machine was hitting this bar here, and so I couldn't do the entire pantograph because I just couldn't finish it. So then I thought, okay, I still love this design. Let me get onto Urban Elementz. You can select your size, so you can do a custom size. And so I put in a custom size where I wanted to make it smaller, and they sent me an email. And they said, so we got your request and we're concerned because they only recommend dropping the size or increasing the size of a pantograph by 2 or 3 inches. And I had definitely requested like 4 or 5 inches down. And so they were like, we're very concerned that this is just not going to be quiltable for you. And are you sure that's what you want us to do? Because once you buy it, it's yours, right? They've custom done it for you and sent it to you. It's yours, whether it works or not. I'll be honest, in the picture that they sent me, it was really hard for me to evaluate where it would be difficult for me to quilt. But once I started thinking about the size of this quilt that I'm going to be doing it on, I got a little bit nervous that even that was going to be too big. So I got back on there and I looked for some more. And I found this one, which is very, very similar. So it still has that feather leaf motif, and it has the circles. It does not have, so the comparison here, because I still have the old one here, it doesn't have this sort of sploosh out of that feather tail. It is more just that center part going through here, which I think is still going to be okay. The other great thing about this is this pantograph, not changed, so I didn't adjust it at all, is 6.75 inches wide. So it's very, very small compared to what I have over here. And that is going to give me lots of room on my machine to be able to do what I need to do. And it is 2 rows too. So it's 2 rows on there, which means even if I run out of room on that first row, I'll still have the same pattern that I can look at, I think. That could be wrong. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that that would work if we had to go that route. I'm hopeful that's not really the case. But now we're going to change this out over here. We're going to take this pantograph down, which I can't use, but I'll hold on to. You never know, one of these days I might get a bigger quilting machine, a fancier one, and not that this one isn't super fancy and works fine, but I might get a nicer, I don't want to say nicer either, I just might get a new one, you never know. And if I get a new one, then I can use that, or I might run into a friend that would like to have that big of a pantograph. So we're going to swap it out with this one though, and then we can go back to the test. We are going to quilt this from the back and from the front to test and see, is the pantograph better looking whenever I quilt it from the front, or does it look pretty much the same from the back? And we're just going to test and see also, like, how long does this take me to do roughly, what are my feelings on doing it, all of that kind of stuff. So the scientific theory though is set up here, right? We have our control fabric right here, very plain, nothing exciting, and we're going to put our pantograph back there, one that I have never done before. So just going to open this now. I've never done it, so there's no pre-learned pattern memory in my hands. It'll be all brand new, and that's what we're going to do. So let's jump into that. Alright, so we have got this new one down, and just so you knew, the other pantograph was 15 inches wide, which is pretty wide, and definitely too wide for an 18-inch throat space, in all honesty. So I do think this 6 and whatever, a quarter or whatever, is going to be much better. And you've got your 2 lines here as well as your ghost here. So my plan is to do this ghost along the edge, and I always do that. I think I'll probably still be okay with the lines that I've already marked here, because I marked those originally with the other ones. I may have to change my little spots here, so we'll see. You know, as long as they kind of hit in the same area, which honestly they do hit in the same area on this one, then I should be okay with using these lines that I've already done. And so what I'll do is do this ghost line and then come back through, and I'll do this top line, and I've got 2, and I could potentially, since I've got these alternating, what I might do is do this ghost line, do this one behind the machine, do this one in front of the machine, and then if I have enough room, reset and do the same exact thing. Now, why, you may ask, would I do that? And the reason is I'm trying to just negate that sort of, I guess, compromise in a scientific experiment, and that some would say, well, if you do this one first and you do it from behind the machine, then, you know, you've already got some muscle memory to do the second one, and so that will give me at least a row to do. And I think having them side by side will also help to compare a little bit better, rather than doing 2 from behind the machine and then 2 from the front, and we get it sort of back to back where we can see in a row. I hope I have enough room on this fabric. We're gonna find out. So let's go ahead and jump into this. Well, you guys know what happened because you saw me drawing it. But obviously I had a bit of a mess up. And so here's another great reason why I like drawing on my pantograph before I stitch it. Because if I had stitched this, there's no going back. And if I had done this on an actual quilt, oh my goodness, would I have been so sad. But let me show you. So here we have the first pass of the pantograph, well really the second pass. So we have the ghost one, and then this is the actual pantograph where I quilted it from behind. And you know, it doesn't look terrible. It's not as neat as I would like it to be. You know, my circles are a little bit more of loops rather than circles in some areas. So then I went on to do the second and this pass. So here's the pantograph. So this one right here, I was going to do the drawing, and I'm so grateful that I did. So here's where I started, and I thought, you know, this is where I stopped. So I was pretty sure I was okay with my spacing, but apparently not. So it started right here, and you can see that I'm a bit off. So I probably should have came down here and then drawn back up. And I'm going to have to look a little bit closer there. But what has happened here is I've overlapped. And a little bit you could say I could sort of fudge this and be fine. But as we go, it doesn't necessarily get that much better here. So we're doing relatively okay. And then again, this little frond right here going this way. And again, here, this part is definitely overlapping where it shouldn't. And I had peeked over to see, but I guess I just peeked over in this section and thought, yeah, we're doing wonderful. It looks lovely. I must be just a bit off from where I was here. So, yeah, so this right here should have been over here. You can see the lineup, and you can see the lineup over here, right? So that's that circle right there, and I should have been right on top of it. And whenever I line this up, for some reason I did not do that. So because I was yeah, so that's okay. You know, the good part here is that this is erasable. So the other thing you may have noticed is the change in pin color. So this pin color is a light pink purple color, and historically I have used the Leonis blue ones. This is a water soluble one, and I have used this, but the quilt that I'm wanting to do this pattern on, once I finally figure out how to do it and master it, and this video is taking a lot longer than I thought it would. I keep running into snafus here, and this is one of them. But I also, so it's blue and white, the quilt that I want to work on. It's the Northwest quilt. You guys have probably seen me put that quilt together. If not, you should check it out. It is quite the put together for a quilt. There's so many intricate pieces to it, in the sense of just making a block and cutting it up and turning it into something completely different. But what I was worried is, because it is blue and white, if I used a blue marking pin on it, I was going to have a hard time seeing it. So Leonis makes these pins, oh here they're upside down, they make these pins right here, and these are air soluble. Now you can use water to erase them, but they're air soluble within 1 to 10 days, but if you want immediate erasing, like I will now, you're going to have to, you can put water on it. So that's what I'm going to do. We'll see how well they water erase. And then unfortunately I'll be done for tonight, because I'm going to have to let the quilt dry so that I can then reline things up and figure out how I screwed up drawing my next line. So let me do that. Okay, I do think that it is coming out fairly well. It does say that it will go away within 1 to 5 days, but I have done just the water and baking soda. I think it's baking soda mixture, and it has come off really nicely. And this, of course, is just a white, or more of like a cream color as well. I did soak it pretty thoroughly, but it looks to be all off. Now, obviously, because it is water soluble and we are trying to draw on top of it, I'm pretty much done for tonight. So that's a bit disappointing. But we can get back to it tomorrow and we can correct our mistake, and then we will be ready to go. So until tomorrow. Okay, everybody, we're back at it here, and I've actually gone ahead and done this second row, and it took me a moment to figure out what happened last time. But let me show you why that line didn't work. And the short answer is because you shouldn't go back and forth between different styles of pantograph, right? You should choose one style and you should stick to it. And I'm flip-flopping for the sake of trying to see which one works better and being able to compare them a little bit easier. But let me show you why. Okay, so here's my pantograph that I did the second time around, and the other thing I'd like to show you all is that the other pantograph is completely gone. So that water on there really dissolved all of that marker really, really well. And we're going to do a bit of a test on this one because I'm not going to quilt this right away. This is supposed to disappear in several days, and I want to see if it actually does that. So we're going to quilt this, but the thing that we need to talk about is why did this overlap? And I'm not talking about here, I'm talking about before where it was really overlapping into these already stitched areas. And what it comes down to is this. Here's my setup for my pin and my needle. When I did it initially, my laser light, which is back here, trained onto the table, was guiding from here. When I went back to do the second row, it was guiding from the pin. Obviously, there is a significant difference between that, you know, an inch or so difference, maybe a little bit longer of a difference. And now the laser light, even though it's pointing at the same spot, is an inch over, and that is how we get our mess up. Now, how did I fix this, right? That's the next question. Well, that comes to the end of this pantograph right here. So at the end of this pantograph, we have this design right here, okay? Which you can see duplicated from here to here on this line. Now, because my pantograph is off by an inch, I was not actually able to use this same guide. I actually had to scoot my light down to this one. It is a repeating pantograph, right? A repeating diagram or design. And so if I put it right here, I'm going to get the same exact duplication of whether I start here, or even if we went down farther and started here, right? It's the same thing. So my light was able to accurately line up here, and I actually then did this second pantograph right here based on starting from here. What does that mean for whenever I go back? I'm probably going to have to change my laser light again. And no, you shouldn't be doing that in a normal pantograph. The only reason that I'm having to change this is because I am going back and forth between styles of doing this pantograph. So this next line right here, I'm going to quilt from the front. And in order to line that up with the back of the quilt, because of that gap between the needle and the pin, I had to change the laser light. Now, I can simply fix this whenever I go from the front quilting to the back quilting again. I'm just going to have to move my laser light so that it lines up at the right spot on that pantograph back there. And that's easily done. And this is a good trick just in case you were quilting and your laser light got bumped. Maybe something many things can happen when we're quilting, and if that happens, all you've got to do is line it up with the same spot on the previous one, and your spacing will be okay, right? So if you line it up at the same swirl or edge or circle or whatever that's on the previous part of the pantograph, then you're fine. If you don't have a 2-row pantograph like I have, and you only have a center one that's your primary one that you are looking at, then you want to look at that ghost part to get the same area as well. So as you can see, although we had a bit of a sloppy ending or beginning here, the end part is that this pantograph is lining up pretty darn well here with the other one. Now, there are a few areas that are a little bit closer than others, and I do think that that is just from me drawing this on here, and I can adjust for that, right? So this area, when I do this, I don't have to quilt it right on that line when I'm on the front of it. I can adjust it how I want, and the same for here. I can make this line not as long and make this smaller. So yes, if I make those slight changes on the pantograph whenever I'm quilting from the front, does that mean that my pantograph is going to look slightly different for every pass because I may have to make slight adjustments here and there? Yes, that is true. And so no, it's not going to be like a machine did it. But I'm not a machine. I am a home quilter, and I think that that's okay, right? So the overall pattern is what we're going for, and having a slightly different shaped feather as to the next feather is going to be a lot less noticeable than crossing over areas and areas overlapping when they're not supposed to. So that's another reason why I like to quilt from the front, because I can control the design a little bit more than when I'm on the back. And just think, if I had quilted from the back and messed up my pantograph and overlapped, I would have stitched all of that incorrectly, and that would have been very sad if that was on a real quilt. But because I drew it on there, even though that was part of the mistake, but if something happens and you bump it and you draw it on there, you can note your mistake, erase all of that easily with a spray bottle, and readjust, which is something that I find very, very attractive when quilting on something that you've taken a lot of time to put together in piece. Alright everybody, so I did that second row that I did from the front, and of course I filmed that for you all so you can see. Now, obviously I wasn't right on point with that line that I had drawn every time. I was able to take a little bit of creative privilege in how I wanted that to look. Does every feather look the same? Absolutely not. It certainly doesn't. But when I compare the two, what I see is a lot more control on the front, where the things that I have done are a little bit more intentional. Are there some mess ups along the way? Yes. It's a brand new pantograph. I'm kind of learning where those go, and as you do that pantograph, as you practice it and quilt it, you kind of learn the structure of it, and you get a little bit of muscle memory. So I do think that it gets even better as you go, and I'm sure that that is the same for when you quilt from the back as well. But let's just look at it where we can talk about it. Okay, so here we have the three lines, right? So we have this ghost line that I did first, doing it on the back. We have the actual from the back pantograph, the normal way that you would do a pantograph. And then we have this line here. Now, yes, a little bit harder because I haven't taken away the Mark Begone marker here, but let me tell you that this marker really did come off really well. So this is the second line of pantograph that I did. And what I like about this, right, is that I feel like my lines are just a little bit more smooth. Maybe they're not, you know, you guys can sort of be the judge, but I feel like even when you look at this, there's a little bit more control than you see back here. I also like that because I was on the back, I was able to do a couple of circles. So I feel like my circles look a lot better, and I just don't know that I would have the confidence to do that twice. And that might be something I do the next time around, is to do a double circle. See, I think here I tried to do a double circle, and it's not as nice because I'm not able to see it, and I don't know, am I going off the rails from the back end? So I do personally think that this one is smoother. Is it perfect? Oh gosh, absolutely not. But I do think my lines are a little bit smoother compared to over here. You know, it's just it's like a grade up, honestly, in my opinion. I do need to take off this Mark Begone, and maybe I'll show you guys that whenever I do it, just so that we can get a even better comparison, because I do feel like you have a little bit of you know, harder to see exactly. But you can see here where this was my original line drawing it, and so how I have kind of adjusted it for how I wanted it to look, as well as just when you're quilting and you're moving your long arm, you know, there's slight adjustments that we all make. The other thing I like is that as I'm quilting from the front, I can see the thread. I can know if I need to get a new bobbin, if there is a puckering, if there's something wrong. I'm just much more likely to see it on this one than I would quilting from the back. So let me give you a better view of the back one. And that way you all can see, you know, if it's something that you would want to do. And then, of course, the last thing I'm going to show you, which I have shown you all this before, but this is my setup, and I definitely like the setup much easier. This is you can release this zip tie, so it's a reusable zip tie that I can put on. I can, as you see, quilt with this on, so I don't have to take it on and off. I just keep the lid on whenever I am actually quilting with it, and whenever I'm drawing with it, then I take it off and push the marker down so that we make contact with it, and that's how we use that. So these are little pin holders that I purchased, and they work really well to hold onto this bar, and my suspicion would be that would work for most, because I assume that these bars are probably fairly standard. And then I do like the Leonis markers here because they're short enough to fit under this. So once you start to get up where a marker would go above here, it really becomes quite difficult. Okay, I did have a plan to do 2 more rows, so to do another row with me doing the in the front pantograph and then one in the back. But time is short. Christmas is upon us. You know, there are things that I need to be doing, and if I want to get this video out for you guys, then we're going to have to cut it short. So I hope that you all enjoyed it. I know it wasn't actually quilting a quilt, but it was working on a pantograph, and it was a comparison to show you all my opinion of why I quilt from the front, a little bit more detail on how I do that, and a little bit of the troubleshooting that you can certainly do. So if you are struggling with quilting your pantographs from the back, yes, by all means keep practicing. I think you will definitely get better. If you are looking to do some pantograph quilting from the front, then this might be a video to help you. The other thing you can do before I quickly go is, and you can see it on the legendary quilt that I did. So I wanted to do a overall same background on a quilt, but there were, on the legendary quilt by Elizabeth Hartman, there are trees and a Sasquatch on it. And so what I did was I used the quilt from the front method of doing a pantograph so that I could draw across the whole thing, and then when I got to a tree I could either decide to stop my quilting, quilt around that, and then restart it. So you can do a pantograph as a background only, using it from the front method rather than just having to quilt everything. And then if you want to put in fine detail, you don't have to worry about starting and stopping or trying to figure out where you need to stop during your pantograph in the back. And I thought that was really, really cool. So I'll, check out that video if you're interested in seeing what that looks like. But that was a really cool way to use a pantograph and something a little bit different, right? So as always, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you next time on The Little Quilter. Thanks.